All right. So today I have with me Casey Armstrong. Casey is one of those guys who often operates behind the scenes, working with smart people and growing massive companies. So in the past, Casey, you've helped drive growth at several technology startups like Mavenlink, where you helped grow the company from 5,000 to 500,000 customers and taking them from no revenue to six figures in monthly recurring revenue. You also worked on Pivotal Tracker, which was acquired by EMC, is a very popular product. I know tons of developers and people that use it. And while there, you doubled organic traffic to nearly 500,000 monthly visitors and acquired, obviously, thousands of new users throughout that process. Uh, you've also worked at Pantheon, where you've helped double the customer base, quadruple revenue to millions of dollars in annual revenue, and led marketing for the New York Times best-selling book, The Lean Entrepreneur. And then most recently, so believe it or not, that was all in your past. Most recently, you ran the growth of Paleo Hacks to more than 1 million monthly uniques and over 25 million annual page views for a recent acquisition. So Casey, welcome to the show. Excited to do this.
Nice. Thanks, Justin. I love the intro.
Yeah, it's glowing. It really makes you feel good. So So before diving into questions, I just wanted to cover, you just exited Paleo Hacks, a site that many people in the paleo community are probably familiar with. Like, what are you up to now?
Cool. So again, thanks for the kind words. Before I talk about my success or talk about my past, I want to congratulate you on your success of the book launch with traction. So very well done.
Thank you.
I actually have a handful of book projects I'm working on myself, so I'll definitely be picking your brain there.
Awesome.
And yeah, stoked to see you still in the top books and on Amazon for marketing and business, etc.
Yeah.
Uh,
Thanks, man.
yeah, so maybe I'll have to flip the script on you in a bit. Uh, um, so yeah, I've got a handful of projects myself, as many of us like you in the technology space. We've got our hands all over the place. So while working with Paleo Hacks, we developed our own Q&A community software, which we called QAsites.com, and that actually currently runs Paleo Hacks. We took a lot of our learnings in my past in SEO to really kind of create what we think is the ultimate, kind of Q&A software out there.
Hmm.
And so we spun that out, and we're going to turn that into a more or less like an enterprise SaaS Q&A platform. And we have a few select customers that we'll be rolling out in October. So I'm pretty excited about that. I think there's a
Awesome.
lot of opportunity for both brands and individuals to really leverage community and Q&A sites in many aspects. Really help put them as like the thought leaders in that space, which can, they'll be able to help drive value to I guess their followers or the users of the platform, and just really harvest like a strong community.
Hmm.
I mean, you're seeing that like on inbound.org or Sean Ellis and Morgan Brown's growthhackers.com, and outside of like the marketing world as well. But those, I think, our whole everybody watching this will know those sites quite well.
Yeah.
Another thing is, and this also kind of came from some projects with Paleo Hacks, is I'm putting together some online summits. We did one called PaleoCon with Paleo Hacks. So more or less we get, the who's who in the paleo space or whatever niche it is. And it's a complete 100% online event. And we have them speak on different aspects to really, help the community there as much as possible. It's like, I mean, you keep seeing these online education startups popping up everywhere. So it's kind of in that vein. So
Yeah.
I'm working on that with Patrick Vlaskovitz, and we have a handful of others. We have one in the music space called Music Conf with Matt Sandler, who's crazy smart, and that's coming out in early January. We've got another in the poker space.
Nice.
Yeah, so that should be fun. My brother actually plays poker for a living.
Nice. Very
Uh,
cool.
and and then for something that I think people on Growth Hackers TV will like, and where you can see it like an online summit in the startup space, is AirPair, which is led by one of the smartest SEO minds that I know, Igor Lebovich, called AirConf. They're doing that right now for people looking into like growth hacking. So yeah, so with AirPair and AirConf, it's a summit, to really help people with growth hacking, pair programming, PHP, Ruby, etc. And then lastly, I'm as always working on helping a few startups with growth and marketing, and a few more book projects, which I can't get into much detail yet, but I'm sure everybody will hear about it. They're, I guess, in the pre-launch phase. But anyway,
Well, assuming you do a good job, which I
yes,
think you
assuming
will.
I'll do a good job. There's no other option, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I want to dive into like you've had an interesting background. So you've driven growth from all kinds of companies. Like you've done the consumer facing side of things with Paleo Hacks. You've done B2B with MavenLink, Pivotal Tractor. How do growth techniques, strategy, and tactics differ between like B2B and consumer facing products?
Great question. And I mean, you see it all the time, whether people are asking it around marketing or growth hacking. But regardless if it's B2B or B2C, it really starts by identifying and figuring out who your target customers are, and then figuring out the right mediums to reach them, regardless of the product.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I think everything starts. But the biggest difference is typically with volume. I mean, with MavenLink, we're still driving a lot of volume, but when you're getting like the high end sales, it's much different.
Got it.
And then it's also how you handle your customers. So like at Paleo Hacks, which is B2C, we focused on increasing targeted top of the funnel traffic, onboarding them to take specific actions like ask questions, follow topics, etc. And was all done without picking up the phone. So it's really optimizing like the onboarding process.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to demo the software, etc. For B2B, it's about driving qualified leads into a sales funnel usually,
Yep.
to get them to try your product, and then make sure you follow up appropriately. Again, like a B2C app might look to add tens or hundreds of thousands of new users a month because their LTV is so much smaller, but a B2B or enterprise company they don't need that. Like
Yeah.
a startup I'm working with called Connectifire, they have deals, they can land deals worth 6 or 7 figures, just one deal, where the B2C apps, it's drastically less than that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I mean, does that mean that you can look at traction channels that maybe have less volume or that don't need to be, as large in terms of user engagement with B2B? Or like
Yeah.
in practice, what does that mean? Like, do you look at different channels or what?
So you'll look at different channels, but it's also the metrics you focus on will be different.
Mm-hmm.
Like with Paleo Hacks, it was our signups or our email captures, which was a KPI of ours, were very much correlated with our SEO traffic.
Got
So
it.
as one went up, another went up.
Mm-hmm.
And the same could be said for another company like Patrick's Superpowered company. He might be focusing on SEO in a similar fashion, but he'll focus on more target niche keywords that might
Yeah.
only drive 100 or 200 visitors a month, because those very qualified leads then turn into paying customers. He only needs to land a handful versus get 20,000 signups that month.
Right. Yeah, it makes total sense. So, I want to touch on one thing. I was on, so I like took a year basically off of Twitter, and now I'm just starting to get back into it. And so I saw something earlier this week where David Sachs, who was PayPal, now he's founded Yammer and sold to like Microsoft for 1 point something billion. He said that Yammer was like one of the first viral B2B products. So he said that a major missed opportunity in B2B is applying consumer growth hacking tactics to B2B products. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Do you agree? And do you see that like being, do you see consumer growth hacks being applied more often to B2B now?
So I'll call him David. I don't know him personally. He's obviously extremely smart. I mean, PayPal and Yammer, it's quite an impressive resume.
Yeah.
So based on this, but I guess I just need a little more context around that statement. To be honest, I haven't used Yammer, but they are an amazing example of a B2B product with B2C components, which I think some other products could utilize. I mean, their slogan alone states that they're like an enterprise
Yeah.
social network. So they were able to like intelligently target large corporations from the bottom up. And they're trying to drive like widespread adoption, and then along with that, take advantage of cloud computing and social network growth, which helped educate their market concurrently.
Hmm.
Also, they are B2B, and I don't know what their enterprise sales look like. It'd be pretty interesting to see, but they also have like a lower price point to get people started. Like the
Yeah.
$3 to $8 per month versus some B2B products that are maybe up to like several $1,000s a month.
Yeah. It's a great point. So, what dynamics do you think make it harder to apply consumer growth tactics to B2B?
So I think when people think of like growth hacking or growth tactics, they're often thinking of like just crazy top of the funnel growth.
Yeah.
When with B2B, it's often much more complex, like a more complex product, higher price point, longer sales process. So volume is not necessarily just a straight volume play.
Yeah.
And with less volume, you have less ability to test. You need, statistical significance to often make decisions.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, one thing I wanted to chat about is a tactic that you used at Mavenlink, where you utilized the Google Apps platform, I believe, to get, I think you said 10,000 leads per month or something like that. Like, can you talk a little bit about how you figured that out? And just like how you tested that and went through that whole process? Because I think that's really interesting and an interesting example of B2B growth hacking.
Yeah, so this was actually the genius idea of Taylor Miles, um, who I worked with at ROI and Mavenlink, et cetera. And he saw this opportunity. Google was introducing this new marketplace, which was going to inevitably grow, and wanted to get in at an early stage. It was like an extremely less hyped version of the App Store.
Mm-hmm.
You get in early and kind of like ride the success.
Yep.
So this untapped new channel, and then we basically worked on driving traffic to the marketplace. Worked with the marketplace team, created relationships with them to see how we could help grow the marketplace too. I mean, like I was alluding to before, rising tide lifts all boats. And so from there, we worked on getting positive, honest reviews from customers and drive installs. I mean, you can kind of see it with your traction book in Amazon. It's if people are purchasing the book, it's marketplace marketing
Yeah.
101. Positive reviews plus purchases or installs or whatever it is that the marketplace is measuring, often leads to success.
Got it.
To finish up on the Mavenlink example, what Taylor saw there and what we focused on was we're looking for small businesses that were somewhat technologically savvy, our early innovators to, quote, crossing the chasm, and where's a better place? Lights off. And where's a better place to find that than Google Apps users? So it was
Yeah.
that's what kind of like led the decision to focus on that.
Got it. Okay. And so, what other platforms do you think are interesting right now? Like, kind of newish, not super competitive just yet, or are there any?
Great question. I'd love if I had like a handful of these to always take advantage of.
Me too.
But I guess it's relatively speaking in the online world, it's like one of the oldest platforms, but with some new components. And again, they're relatively new. But I'd go with semantic SEO.
Hmm.
Um, It's been really catching a lot of steam recently, but I mean, it's been around for quite a while. But I think a lot of people are kind of they're not necessarily paying attention to it as much as they, I think, should. Um, it's something I've been focusing on a lot more lately. It actually is something that we baked into our Q&A product very heavily because I think that's where there's just an amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
And regardless, whether it's a B2B or B2C company, I think that there's so many ways to take advantage of it. I mean, you see Google tweak
Interesting.
the SERPs all the time. I mean, Google authorship is down, but that's the most visible answer. I mean, search for like a recipe or videos, and you'll see
Yeah.
them in the search results. Um, so that's something that I would have tell people to focus on. And also, anytime that Google and Facebook and Bing and Yahoo and Twitter kind of like all agree on something,
Yeah.
uh, I think you can basically guarantee that it's going to be pretty big. And also, I mean, they hold the fire hose,
Hmm.
and also it. I think it does provide. People argue that Google's stealing traffic, the traffic, et cetera. And I mean, I don't want to get into that whole argument, but I think it does. It can benefit the users a lot. And then lastly, and this isn't new again, but it's email. I mean, email works extremely well. I'm working on some other projects that I didn't touch on before, but email as like the primary focus. It's
Yeah.
and ways to optimize email. I mean, there's email's not just about capturing an email and like sending them something. There's
Yeah.
obviously a lot more that goes into it, such as getting it into their inbox.
Yeah. I've actually been looking in I think we've talked about this before, but I've been looking at something in that space as well. And just 2 weeks ago, I was taking a look at some of the stuff you can do with the Gmail like API, essentially. I think that's going to be pretty interesting too,
Oh,
where you
nice.
can do like actions and stuff in that. I think that's really cool, and I expect to see a lot more of that type of stuff happening. Like you could order a product, or go directly to like a sales page just from clicking on a little button that's on the in your email. You know what I mean? Like I
Hmm.
think all that stuff is really interesting.
So I'm actually glad you brought that up because that kind of ties both these together because it's not like either your ability to RSVP to a calendar invite without even opening the email is just by coincidence. That's actually like the semantic, or that's like the structured markup, the semantic or schema.org, actions built into the email that allow you to do that. So that kind of merges like, structured data and email kind of together. So
Yeah. So speaking of, when you say semantic SEO is an opportunity, it just occurred to me that some people out there might not know what it is totally validly. So we should
yes.
dive into that. So when you say semantic SEO, what do you mean?
So it's kind of how you, like when I said structured data, um, it's it's how you tell Google. You better present to Google what is, or Yahoo and Bing if people search there.
DuckDuckGo.
Um, what is on your page and like how things tie in together.
Hmm.
So for instance, like you might put up a recipe and like Google can interpret that quite well, but as the web expands, you know, considerably every day, you know, Google's kind of looking to the webmasters to help them, figure out what is on the page. Is this a website? If so, is it? Oh, it's about it's a cooking site. It's about recipes. Oh, this post is a recipe. How long should I cook this for? What are the ingredients?
Yeah.
What are etc.
Yeah. And so when you tell people that they should look at semantic SEO or think about taking advantage of it, does that just mean going through and restructuring their pages for like to take advantage of this kind of the way that Google is measuring it, or like what does that mean in practice?
Yeah, so I think two things. I think, yeah, putting things in context for how you put it in practice is what's most valuable. So, like the two things there are one is you have the potential for more visibility in the SERPs. So, whether it's a video snippet, or there's, the rating for your recipe. Like you search, I don't know, like apple pie recipe, and you'll see, there's ratings on it, and there's reviews, and there's maybe how long it takes to cook and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
you're taking up more of the real estate in the search results.
Got
And
it.
then also, I think that Google will reward you because they're better understanding. They have a better understanding of what your pages are about, and so therefore, in theory, you can rank higher as well. So it's kind of a
Yeah.
combination of both.
So does semantic SEO make sense as something to focus on for a business that's not using user generated content?
Yeah, I mean, it's not for. I think every site can use it to some extent, but let's see. This project that I worked on called Hire Live, they're a career fair, job fair
Hmm.
company. Um, you know, they have B2B and B2C components, and while people aren't necessarily commenting on the different events, they're able to present their events, in a more structured way, so Google can better understand them, especially when their
Got
events are
it.
very timely. So it's like, this job fair is in Orange County on this date.
Yep.
These companies will be there, etc.
Totally. Okay, cool. That makes sense. So your blog, I want to shift gears a little bit away from semantic SEO and talk about some of the things that you believe in, like you cover on your blog. So your blog is literally fullstackmarketer.com. Can you talk a bit about like what you mean or what you think, what your definition of a full stack marketer is, and then maybe touch on like how important, like how being technical fits into being a full stack marketer?
Yeah, so I could talk about that for quite a while. Start off, I mean, people could start by, checking out your book, Traction. I mean, it's basically like it honestly, it lays out a lot of the, full stack marketing concepts. We've got you over there between Gary Vaynerchuk and Marshall McLuhan and Joseph Campbell.
I
So,
love it. I love
um,
it.
yeah, some big names. So there's some big shoes to fill. So so full stack marketing. I mean, people will hate on the term just like they do growth hacker and probably
Yeah.
did full stack developer initially and whatnot. But whatever, it helps describe a role or whatnot quite well. So basically, it's somebody who understands the entire stack and how everything plays together, as you
Hmm.
would extrapolate, even if you had no clue what I was talking about. And it's a real thing. For instance, Kissmetrics. I got an email from Kissmetrics the other day. They just released a few marketing job opportunities. Which,
I saw
by the
that.
way, anybody listening to this, talk about an unreal opportunity. I mean, if you can work with somebody like Keaton Shaw, Neil Patel, and Lars and other people on their team, that's something to jump on. But anyways, they include like full stack marketing as something that they're looking for. Specifically, they list that. They want people that have worked on everything at one point or another.
Yeah.
Content, conversion rate optimization, social, email, SEO, SEM, and how that fits together. Because you're not necessarily an expert in all of them, but you know where to start and kind of how they tie together.
Yeah.
And that's what's important. Like for an early stage startup, budget, bandwidth, efficiency, that's what makes or breaks the company. And you need to drive, like for instance, you might need to drive traffic through SEO and social, then convert the people with your development, design, and CRO
Yeah.
chops, message them with your content skills, and then get the proper like drip campaign to add value to them like immediately. I mean, it
Totally.
probably sounds exactly what you did with your book, and startups all over do that. It's
Yeah.
usually like a founder or a handful of people, and you need to start growing this immediately. And even if
Yeah.
you've raised money, it's still oftentimes it's one person or like two people that handle all of that.
Yeah. So
Um,
true. We literally hired zero consultants for a book.
yeah, because that's your job, and you don't have like
Yeah.
crazy budget. And if you did have crazy budget, if you teach yourself those skills so you can pocket that budget.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then yeah, and then you mentioned the technical side of it. So I don't. consider it a must, but I don't think anybody would argue that it's not extremely helpful. I
Hmm.
mean, you teach, some of these like growth hacking technical courses, and like you're not teaching somebody to be, the next Ruby developer at GitHub,
Yeah,
but there's still things you can take advantage of, HTML, MySQL, et cetera.
totally.
And so I think at least understanding basic HTML, how to build a site on existing platforms like WordPress,
Yeah.
Drupal, et cetera, that can get you a really long way without having to like do hardcore programming. And you don't need to be like a PHP expert and you put together like a really quality site. And then be able to talk the talk. Like I know managing dev projects has helped me a lot. Just,
Yeah.
then continue able to like lead large scale development projects.
Yep.
And then I know like Andrew Chen, he helped, I mean, controversy always helps drive the conversation. So I know he helped bring Growth Hacker to popularity by arguing, that you had to be a programmer. But if you look at some of the best growth hackers out there, or people who coined the term, like Sean Ellis and Heaton, who I mentioned before, and Patrick Blaskovitz, they aren't technical, but they're amazing marketers.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily a must, but again, I I don't think any of them included. And Morgan Brown, who I was talking to about this a couple days ago, like that's like the top of his list. He'd love to be able to do that, but it shouldn't stop you from moving forward in growth hacking or full stack marketing or whatever you want to call it.
Totally agree. Yeah, I mean, I've just found that technical familiarity is such a huge thing because it gives you a sense for what you can and can't do, but then you can like pass it off to have someone else do it if it's, something that's worth doing.
You nailed it right there, and I think that's where marketers, whatever you want to call yourself, can really take advantage of it. Is knowing like what the possibilities are.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, so I was looking at Gmail's API docs. I'm not actually technical. Like, I'm not going to build something there. I was just like, what are the possibilities? What functionality is this new API really like enabling? And I've already got like some good ideas that I hired someone to help me test. So and I'm not like setting myself up as the perfect marketer. I just think that having an idea of what is within like the scope of possibility is really, really helpful when it comes to figuring out new growth channels, new growth hacks like tactics and all of this kind of stuff. So last thing I want to cover before we hop off is your marketing with the Lean Entrepreneur and Pivotal Tracker. So I think those two are both very interesting, like kind of, so, the Lean Entrepreneur, you guys did a lot of stuff around the launch and marketing that. And then Pivotal Tracker is like one of the better known productivity and like team tools that I've ever seen. And so I'd be curious, like, how long did it take you? What worked, first of all, in growing those two things? And then how long did it take you to like find your growth engine for each of those products or launches?
Cool. So those are both quite different.
Yeah, yeah.
So with Lean Entrepreneur, it's what you'll see with a lot of products that have success, and not to equate either the Lean Entrepreneur or Pivotal Tracker to a company like Apple, but you'll get companies that have crazy growth and success like Facebook, Instagram, GitHub, Salesforce, again, Apple. People like love these companies. And so a common thread between both of them was really harnessing the passionate users and simultaneously creating a lot of value. Those are like, and I know some people will be like, oh, well, it's a cheesy, broad answer, but I mean, it's really the truth. I mean, for Lean Entrepreneur, Patrick and Brant, along with other people, other thought leaders in the lean space, such as Eric Ries and Steve Blank, who, were are ridiculously smart and helped countless entrepreneurs. It's really continuing the conversation there, and then just from like a tactical standpoint, I mean, that's like a whole nother podcast. With but it's things that you found helpful from guest posting or aligning yourself with quality brands. That's something pretty cool that that was done with a lean entrepreneur is partnering with like American Airlines and Microsoft and whatnot. I mean, it's an extremely innovative idea for a book launch. Like people don't necessarily do that, but it's they these other brands wanted to take advantage of like the lean concepts and kind of align themselves there and get in front of entrepreneurs, and that worked extremely well. And then, I mean, more book tactics. Again, we could do a whole book podcast, but
Maybe
there's
we should
like,
at some point.
we should at some point. For people who want something now, Tucker Max just did a podcast with Lewis Howes a couple of weeks ago, and I mean, Tucker has several #1 New York Times best-selling books. So
Yeah,
what he says, you should definitely listen to.
totally. Now, what about Pivotal Tracker? Because that's more of a traditional like software kind of play.
Yeah, so that was a combo of both Google Apps Marketplace and kind of SEO there. And so high level, again, it was kind of leveraging their extremely well-known and well-loved brand to really help drive growth. The community was out there, and they just needed people to kind of help harvest that and keep pouring them on top of the funnel. I mean, I don't know a developer that hasn't used Tracker at some point. To be honest, it's probably my favorite like project management software, whether it's for a development project or not.
Yeah, it's true. And so, what did you do to engage the people in that community? Like, what would you say was your largest growth driver there, and like how long did it take to get to that?
So the largest growth driver was, well, outside of SEO, was definitely the Google Apps Marketplace. And again, that was similar to what I spoke about with MavenLink. We're looking for small businesses that are, technologically savvy. Not that all Google Apps users are hyper tech savvy, but this was a couple of years ago, so Google Apps was even newer, and we just had like a better idea of the small businesses using that. And again, it's mostly for software development, but trying to help make Tracker, I guess, slightly more mainstream. It worked quite well.
Yeah, that's awesome. So final 2 questions to wrap. There are a lot of startups that watch Growth Hacker TV. What do you want startups to know about growth that they usually get wrong?
I like that. So one is, don't necessarily copy exactly what others do, but look at the why. So for instance, if you're to talk again about the Google Apps Marketplace, or whether it's the Chrome store or whatnot, just because it worked for one company doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for another. But there might be, and also like these marketplaces and whatnot become saturated. And this is just to use marketplace as an example to look at the why. But it's whether it's iOS App Store, Google Apps Marketplace, Amazon, seeing, they created an awesome product that people loved, created some type of way to motivate these people to like submit positive reviews, and then continue to drive traffic on top of it. And so, that's kind of like the blend there. But so it's mostly looking at the why. Another thing is, don't forget about existing traffic. As mobile and tablets, et cetera, become, just grow more and more. I don't know what the numbers are, but people have been quoting how like iPad sales have like massively exceeded Macs. And so don't forget about existing traffic. Like at Paleo Hacks, we were getting crazy mobile traffic. I don't know, several 100,000 visitors a month on mobile, but we weren't trying to do any email capture there. And so we spent all this time, like years of time and effort to get this traffic, And then, yeah, they were using the product, which is awesome, and we wanted them to keep doing that. But also, we could provide value through the email, so we started capturing emails that way. And and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, we start adding, thousands of more email addresses to our list, which was again a KPI of ours we focused on. Um,
Right.
so look at the why, and don't forget about existing traffic.
That's great. So, what are some examples of startups that you see that are getting growth right but aren't household names yet?
Let's see. That's a tough question. I like that. I like that though. So I'm quite biased, I guess, but I think Connectifier, who I mentioned before, they're going
Yeah.
to blow up. They any company that's hiring anybody technical, I think it's a no-brainer to use these people. But I guess more household name that's not extreme, that's not like an Uber or Facebook status yet is Wealthfront. I
Yeah.
mean, I can't see their financials, but Elliot Schmuckler, their head of growth and marketing, was presenting at the 500 Startups distribution event that we were at,
Yep.
and just his numbers alone, and plus you look at Elliot's past and he's working with Andy Johns on this, and you team those guys together, and whoever else they have on board. I mean, that's a recipe for success.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. And then last question, what's exciting to you right now?
I mean, like I mentioned before, I think in the marketing space, I really like the semantic SEO efforts. Also, I mean, just the full stack marketing in general, like tying
Yeah.
things together. I love, getting creative and just thinking of, like we had lunch a few months back and talking about tying different APIs together with email and social, and there's just so many
Yeah.
like cool ways to like for user growth. um and I don't know, just I think those will just continue to expand, and as people get more creative and leverage their past learnings or learnings of others, it's gonna be some pretty innovative ideas.
Awesome. Totally agree. Well, Casey, man, this has been awesome. I hope you enjoyed coming on. So thanks for your time. And yeah, we'll get this up in a couple weeks.
Awesome. Thanks, man.